Every year, fantasy players let our teams down. Well, it's a new season. Will we forgive those players who let us down last year and give them another chance? Or are we struggling to forgive them? Plus, what rookies should we draft this year in fantasy football? It's next. This is the Fantasy Football Fellowship Podcast, where we unpack fantasy, faith, and life. I'm Bryce Johnson with Tripp Smith, and we are your fantasy coaches here to encourage you and help you win while also helping you play fantasy football with purpose all season long. We want to help you draft a great team. So we will talk preparation. We will talk about the NFL teams that will really sway this year's fantasy season one way or the other based on how well or how bad they do this year. And then also plenty of rookies to be excited about. Who do we target? When do we target them? What offenses do we want to be a part of as fantasy managers? And then also we'll continue to talk about this time of year, what kind of preparation we need to do to get ready for our fantasy drafts. But man, we are thrilled to be back for another season here on the Fantasy Football Fellowship Podcast. If you missed last week, I encourage you to go check that podcast out. We did a welcome episode, really catching you up to speed on what Fantasy Football Fellowship is all about. The ministry behind FFF and sort of the outlook for this podcast specifically. But for those of you that are finding this episode in your Unpacking It podcast feed, the regular Unpacking It show will be back next week. But actually, that will even be a special edition because it is our summer movie series, which we will kick off with an episode about the Little Giants. But right now we are kind of including our fantasy podcast in our Unpacking It feeds, as well as our normal Fantasy Football Fellowship podcast feeds as well. So the encouragement is make sure you are subscribed to both, and in the coming weeks, you'll get whatever episode for each that is the corresponding feed. So make sure you subscribe. Make sure you are all set with the Fantasy Football Fellowship podcast as well as the Unpacking It podcast. So we will be doing both in the middle of July. So be excited for that. But today is just the fantasy show, and we have got a lot to get into as Tripp and I are your fantasy coaches. We won't always be right, but we hope we'll be convincing. And we've made plenty of mistakes in players that we thought were going to be awesome for us that weren't. And so today on the show, we've got to talk about forgiveness. We've got to discuss what players it's time to forgive and move on. And then when it comes to our own lives, what does it mean to forgive people that have hurt us, caused us pain, fractured relationships? How do we respond to that, especially as followers of Jesus? And so here at Fantasy Football Fellowship, our passion is fantasy football, but more importantly, our passion is to see sports fans and fantasy managers following Jesus. And so what we've done is we've made Fantasy Football Fellowship a resource available to fantasy leagues to meet during the season. And so the podcast is a part of it, but we also have written content. And so all that content is available on our website, fantasyfootballfellowship.com. And you sign up as a fantasy manager, you sign up your whole league. And so then throughout the season, you meet for league meetings and you discuss the content, the weekly breakout, a fantasy concept that relates to the Bible, relates to life. We've got questions for you. We've got a challenge for you. And so we hope that you'll participate in that part of the ministry while also enjoying the podcast as we will talk about the weekly breakout as well. So in the off season, the breakouts are slightly different, really only available on the podcast, but then starting at the beginning of September, we'll have the written content that will correspond with the or correspond, whatever the word is. It'll go along with the audio, video, and written all together. So how about that? All on the same track. So excited for leagues to start up. We just had a church sign up today from New Mexico. I was actually born in New Mexico. How about that? No connection there, but thankful to have them join us. Heard from a church yesterday down in, I think he's in Arkansas or Alabama. And so they had an awesome season last year. They will be back. So churches around the country participating, leagues around the country. My church, we're trying to get 6 leagues this year going. My league's already starting. I had the winner reach out yesterday. He's asking, all right, hey, what's the story for this season? I'm ready to defend the title. I know everybody's after me. You better believe it. It's that time of year. So we are gearing up. We are ready. We'll do a breakout in just a little bit, but let's say hello to Tripp and let's dive into some discussion about rookies. We get new players to draft this year. Tripp, how you doing? How you feeling?
I'm good. Bryce, I'm doing great. Am I doing great? Bryce, I'm doing great. Something going on?
There you are.
There we go. Hey, Bryce, I'm doing great. Hey, I'm good, man. It is that time of year. It's the time of year when, for me, I start sending around text messages to my various leagues. What are we doing for the draft? Where are we going to have the party? It's a time when the champions absolutely should be talking smack, reminding people that they are the champions from last season. As this is airing, I think training camps are starting in the next couple of weeks for most of the teams in the NFL, so that's really exciting. And one of the exciting things about training camps is these rookies, hearing how they're showing out in the first couple of weeks of training camp, who's impressing their teams, who's pressing for a starting position from the very beginning of the season. So it's one of those great times a year when you can start to get excited about football again, and that's what I'm doing with you.
Absolutely. In many ways, the NFL draft kicks off another season of fantasy football. It's sort of your first look at, okay, all right, the season's getting going again. Who's adding to these teams? And now as fantasy managers, we've got to navigate, okay, where do these guys actually fit in? There will be a lot of hype for rookies. Which ones will actually come in and have an impact on this season? Now, for those of you that play dynasty football, there are other great podcasts out there that really go deep dive into dynasty, and you draft differently and your approach is different. I know Tripp has a lot of experience with dynasty leagues, and so he can offer some insight in that regard. But as we're talking rookies today, it really is about who's coming in this season. And will they make an impact week 1? Or which guys do we want to stash because they're going to make a difference week 6 or even down the stretch in seasons? And so will you be able to keep a rookie on your bench all season long? And knowing, which rookies to sort of pass on and let other people buy into the hype, and then which ones, no. You got to buy into the hype, and or which guys are under the radar that we want to be the ones, the wise GMs to go draft these guys. So, following the NFL draft, which rookies are you most excited about based on the talent that they have, but also their situation, their opportunity, and where they landed?
The name at the top of the list for me, this is an easy one, is Matthew Golden. I think I've heard the sort of the bear case for Matthew Golden, why it might not work out, but everything that Jordan Love and the other Packers players are saying about him so far after OTAs, the first wide receiver that they've drafted in the first round in something like 20 years, I think that Golden is going to be their sort of wide receiver 1. Ooh. Pretty much from the beginning of the season. I know that you rightly pointed out, I got to turn off my dynasty brain here, and that's important. There's always a learning curve for these guys. Even the best players, first few weeks of the season, it takes them a while to get acclimated. And then there is the rookie fatigue effect that we hear about often, where these rookies kind of down the stretch, because they're not used to playing that 17-game, 18-week season, and especially into the playoffs, can get a little worn down. But I think that Matthew Golden, you're already hearing talk that he's going to be the guy in that wide receiver room for the Packers. Jordan Love seems to be really impressed by him and to really like him. I don't pay much attention to coach speak during the training camp and preseason time, because I think the best coaches, what they do is they they give every player on their team a reason to believe I could be the guy this season. But when quarterbacks and when other players are talking about how impressed they are by the new rookies, that means something to me. And the way that Jordan Love is talking about Matthew Golden right now, I think is just something to keep an eye on. So he's the rookie I'm most excited about.
My thoughts on the Packers, and I said on the last show, I like the tight end Kraft because the wide receiver room seems so full and confusing. And like, to me, Romeo Doubs is like the solid guy, but not a real high ceiling. Jaden Reed is really exciting, but is kind of injury risk and a little boomer bust. And then nobody can trust Christian Watson anymore. So there's definitely an opportunity for Golden. But there's also still guys that have been there. So that's where I'm a little hesitant.
It's a crowded room for sure. I think that the Packers are frustrated with that sort of wide receiver just glut, like that clog that they've had there, and they need somebody to take it, and he has every opportunity to take it, and I do think that he has the talent to do that. But if we're halfway through the season here and it's like Golden has a good week, Reed has a good week, Dobbs has a good week, Christian Watson's not playing this season, but Dontavian Wicks has a good week, I won't be surprised by that at all. But Golden's a guy I want to take a shot on if he's there in the later rounds of my redraft league.
Fair enough. All right, so we'll get to some of your other guys. We have to start, though, with one of the top picks in the draft, which was Ashton Jeanty. And I'm a running back guy. Rookie running backs can absolutely make an impact right away. Last year we saw Bucky Irving he's probably the best rookie running back. But Gibbs and Bijan a couple years ago came in and made an impact. So guys can come in, no question about it. When you're drafted in the top 10, so Jeanty went 6 or 7, that's a legit top, he was an awesome college player coming from Boise State. He ends up with the Raiders, which in some ways gives you pause because, last year they did not run the ball well, some offensive line concerns, but Pete Carroll comes in. We know what he did with Marshawn Lynch. We know the desire to run the ball. So in many ways, there's excitement for, all right, Jeanty's good, checks all the boxes talent-wise. The opportunity's absolutely going to be there. We talked about it in the last show. Geno Smith is a solid quarterback. Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers. There's enough there for that offense to produce. The biggest question for me, though, with Jeanty, how early am I willing to draft him?
Right.
Because I'm in on him. I think he's great. And if you look back at the history of top 10 running backs, they usually come in and they hit. Now, how quickly they hit is, maybe a little debatable, but, Ezekiel Elliott and Christian McCaffrey and Leonard Fournette and, you go down the list. Even Trent Richardson came in initially and was good. Then he sort of faded out. But a lot of these guys, they really do come in and contribute. So there's a lot of optimism in that regard. I'm sitting at the 5th pick in my key fantasy league. Am I willing to take Jeanty at 5? And that's where there's pause.
Right.
I think if you get him 8, 9, 10 in the first round, now we're talking. Now you feel a little bit better because there is always a risk with a rookie, period. Because we haven't seen it. We don't know in the NFL how it's going to translate. So that would be my initial takeaway on Jeanty. But overall, I'm excited about him.
Yeah, me too. I think he's less a part of this rookie conversation and more a part of that first round running back conversation, right? Which
is crazy. Yeah.
I think to me it has become clear that you need one of those anchor running backs on your fantasy roster. And a lot of how your early fantasy season turns out is, did you hit on that first running back that you took? Did that guy that you thought was going to be a top 12 running back turn out to be that? Jeanty, there's no question, has the talent to be that guy. I do think as training camp goes on, as the preseason goes on, as the hype builds about him, there's going to be somebody in your league who's going to take him in the first 6 or 8 picks. And that's probably a little too rich for me. There are other running backs that I think I feel are a little more reliable, or I'm willing to wait to the second round and get still one of those best running backs that's at the back end of RB12 territory. And
the first round,
you don't like that. I know we differ on this philosophy. I'm taking a running back much earlier this season than I did last season, but I think Jeanty's probably going to be a little too rich for my blood by the time that real draft season comes around.
I think we'll get into really first round discussion in a couple of weeks. We got a breakout topic about foundation cornerstone pieces to your lineup, but you want the can't miss guys, and so drafting a rookie in the first round of your fantasy draft just includes a lot of risk, and so
he's running back 4 on Fantasy Pros right now in ADP, and I'm looking at the guys that are behind him. Derrick Henry, Devon Achane, Christian McCaffrey. There's uncertainty about those guys, but then you've got guys like Josh Jacobs, Bucky Irving, who you just named, Jonathan Taylor, and I think that I'm willing to pass on Genty, particularly if I'm going to get a comeback pick on the snake draft in the second round and take somebody like a Jonathan Taylor. That feels better to me as I'm thinking about it now at the beginning of July.
On a side note, if CMC or Jonathan Taylor slips, those guys are good value. Yeah. I'm willing to roll the dice on those guys in the second round. If that holds true, those are interesting guys this year. So we'll get into them as the season goes along, or the offseason goes along. All right, so let's just stay with running backs. Curious your thoughts on Omarion Hampton, because you're a UNC guy. He ends up with the Chargers, so that's an interesting spot. And then I'll mention this on the Ohio State side of things. They send 2 running backs into the NFL draft, Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. And I like Travion Henderson with the New England Patriots. So I said on last episode, I'm in on Mike Vrabel. I'm in on the Patriots. They're going to be a lot better this year. I like Henderson, especially where kind of he's going 5th, 6th round in fantasy drafts. I'm willing to go in on him. What he did at Ohio State was great. Vrabel's going to want to run the ball, and I'm not real high on Ramondre Stevenson at this point. Even if he's good for like the first 3 weeks or whatever as they ease Henderson in, Stevenson's not their guy. He's not Vrabel's guy. Henderson is Vrabel's guy, and Henderson is going to be hopefully my guy on a lot of my fantasy rosters.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's the move there, right? If week 1, Ramondre Stevenson has 14 touches and Travion Henderson has 8 or something like that, I'm going to trade for Henderson right away because whoever drafted him probably took him pretty early, and I could see that being a timeshare early in the season. I don't think Ramondre is a bad running back, and he's punched the clock there with the Patriots through some lean years. But yeah, I'm with you on Henderson. I like Quinshon Judkins too. I think that he's probably going to be a solid running back there.
In Cleveland. I mean,
yeah. Omarion Hampton, you got to love the landing spot with the Chargers, but there's just that issue of Najee Harris being there. I think Hampton, I believe, is much better than Najee Harris. But again, it's a similar situation of what's the breakdown there going to be in terms of touches. But there's just some interesting rookie running backs this season that I think probably the move is to not expect them to get that many touches for the first third of the season and then go out and try to get some of these guys like Caleb Johnson or RJ Harvey. So there's some really, really interesting rookie running backs that you can target for trades later in the season. There's maybe only 2 or 3 that I'm drafting at their current ADP at the beginning of the season, if that makes sense.
I'm definitely intrigued with Caleb Johnson with Pittsburgh, and I know I'm bigger on Pittsburgh or higher on Pittsburgh than you are overall, but I also like Jaylen Warren a lot. So I like both those guys, and I'll probably draft one of them in all of my drafts. Like I'll probably have one of those guys and just sort of hedge my bet on that.
I actually think they can both be good too, by the way. I mean, I think there's a scenario where Warren plays his sort of relief role where he catches passes and is more like the scat back or whatever there. And I think both of those guys could succeed this season.
And Denver is interesting with RJ Harvey because last year was just such a nightmare for that running back room. I just like Sean Payton. We just don't know what he wants to do at the running back position, but he did, draft this guy. But then they signed Dobbins.
Dobbins just got signed, and if you pay attention to Peyton and the things he's been saying early, he's talking the most about Audric Estime.
Yeah,
you know,
so now we're going
him?
back to him.
You know, you remember when we were talking last season
Jaleel
about Audric
McLaughlin's still
Estime
there.
and Kimani Vidal. I mean, these guys are just they're an afterthought now, and who knows how those crowded running back rooms are going to shake out. And for that reason, I'm probably steering clear of some of these rookies later in the draft in crowded running back rooms, and that's when I'm going to be loading up on wide receivers in most of my drafts, I think. So,
see, I'm the opposite. I want to roll the dice on some running backs late.
Maybe I'm just hurt from last season going wide receiver heavy early, but I got to get an anchor running back this season. I mean, I'm really set on that. It's not that I wouldn't take running backs there in those middle rounds. It's just that I'm not sure I would take these rookies with unknown roles in those places. I'd probably go with some guys that we know a little bit more about.
The danger with rookies is there is a built-in excitement because they're new. And so we have to help ourselves when draft time comes. It's like, ooh, I want to get the new name. I want to be the first guy to have this player on my roster, especially in your home leagues. And I know I'm always guilty of this. It's like, I want to be the guy that discovered the guy and I got him. And so there is a fun element to that. And in many ways, at least get one guy just to keep it interesting and be wise about it. But we also don't want to reach for guys. We don't want to overpay for rookies because of that excitement. We're like, oh, I'm going to miss out on them. And then oftentimes rookies do not produce until week 8. And then at that point, you're 3-4, right, and you should have just gotten a solid veteran to get you up, moving up the standings in your fantasy league. So it can really bite you. I've seen it happen before in leagues where a manager went so heavy on rookies in a redraft league and most of them missed, or most of them just weren't relevant till it was too late. So I've tried to learn from others' mistakes and learn that lesson. So get excited about rookies, identify a few, just don't go over the top.
I feel like we have to talk about Travis Hunter. Okay,
we got to talk wide receivers. Let's talk wide receivers.
Okay, so all right, I want to make sure we're not moving on from rookies. There's a few, interesting receiver names here. But what are your thoughts on Travis Hunter? There's your other non-quarterback first 10 picks guy that the Jaguars gave up a haul to get him. Is he going to be on any of your teams?
I don't know yet. I am. This is one of those wrestling. I'm trying to figure out where I land because both of us, we were burned by the Jaguars last year. I went in on a couple different players. They did not pan out to the level that we had hoped. So it's more of, all right, am I going to buy into this new regime? I can't even think of the head coach now from Tampa Bay. I've already forgotten his name. Right. So it's like, do I really believe in him?
So we're not buying into the regime.
He was the offensive coordinator for the Bucs, whatever his name is. And of course, Trevor Lawrence is still there. Are we really going to trick ourselves into thinking that this is the year for Lawrence? So Hunter's awesome. Like, Hunter's an unbelievable athlete, but I saw a headline the other day is, does Jacksonville really want him to be elite on one side of the ball or the other? Yeah. And so is that going to be on offense or defense? And let's face it, Brian Robinson Jr. was awesome last year. So they're probably in more desperate need for defensive help than they are at the wide receiver position because they got a guy.
Yeah.
So
Liam Cohen,
thank you,
coach of the Jaguars. Brian Thomas Jr., receiver for the Jaguars.
Did I say Robinson?
Brian Robinson Jr., running back for the Commanders. It's hard to keep these guys straight, man. I mean,
we're getting the rust off. Sorry,
yeah,
my bad.
I think that there's going to be, again, somebody in your league who's excited about Travis Hunter. And we may get more clarity in the preseason about what his role is actually going to be. I think that he's the kind of guy where I think there's a good chance that he's the rookie of the year in the NFL this season, and he spends more time on the football field than maybe any other player in the NFL, but his volume as a wide receiver is too low for him to be a viable fantasy option. So that's a guy, just if you feel yourself starting to get excited about him during the preseason, I understand. I'm with you. I'm excited about him too. You got to check you better be pretty sure that he's going to play a lot of wide receiver and feel good about. I think I feel good about where the Jags offense is headed. I think.
Yeah, but I don't know what they're going to do with Travis Etienne. There's a lot of question marks in Jacksonville, so I'm probably more on the concern side.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to have Travis Hunter on too many teams. There's going to be somebody in every one of my leagues that's more excited about him. I'm excited to watch him.
Yeah, as a football player, but as a fantasy player, there's just too many questions. Right. I think.
Yeah, agreed.
I think there's some other more positive, secure opportunities there where you'd have to draft Hunter, I think. All right, so the other wide receivers to mention, well, we got our hometown team. We broadcast here in Charlotte, just outside of Charlotte, Mount Holly, but we're Panthers fans. It was a surprise pick when the Panthers drafted Ted McMillan early, but there is absolute opportunity here. And the Panthers, similar to the Jags, and what's fascinating, they'll play week 1. What trajectory are we on here? Will the momentum pick up where it left off for the Panthers? Bryce Young was playing well. Panthers were in games, winning some games. Thielen's back. Xavier Legette is back. And now Ted McMillan is in the mix. Can McMillan truly be that number 1 guy? Just like you were talking about with Green Bay earlier. Some bunch of guys kind of in the mix. And actually the Panthers added Hunter Renfrow, who's a fantasy darling at one point. Had some big weeks for fantasy managers.
He's from South Carolina, right?
Oh, yeah.
And that's kind of get him back home.
He's going to make the team. Right. I'll stand by that. So. Yeah. He's going to be. So those are 4 guys you're talking. Then you throw in Jalen Coker. We have 5 wide receivers with the Panthers that could make an impact. So will Tet make a big enough impact for fantasy managers to get excited about? I'm not sure yet. I'm not pounding the table for him just yet. I still love Adam Thielen. And actually, I like Xavier Legette. I think he's going to be a steal. He's one of your late round steals. A little, we'll get to that as the offseason goes along. But Legette was a top pick last year, a first round pick last year for the Panthers, later in the first round. But he had some injuries, some confidence stuff. I think he bounces back in a big way. So I'm intrigued by the pick of Tet. I think there's some ceiling opportunity there. Could he be the number 1 down the line? Yes. Right away? I don't know. I'm not sure yet.
Yeah. I think the Panthers seem to have a type with these wide receivers. They pick these big body, not necessarily burners, that were succeeded in college because they were so big and kind of these like high point. They could go up and get the ball or box out their defender. And it hasn't worked well for the Panthers in general when they've gone after some of those guys. But it's too early to say with Legette. And I like Ted McMillan as a seems like he's a high character kind of guy. So I hope that he succeeds. But again, I think I'd rather choose one of the sleeper receivers. I kind of like Jalen Coker. I'm a little bit of a believer in him. But to your point, it's like take a swing at one of those sleeper receivers like a Legette, like a Coker, maybe even Hunter Renfrow, just see maybe catches a bunch of passes this season. I don't know. But,
in the slot, maybe.
Right. Yeah. Who knows? We didn't think Adam Thielen was going to be what he's been the last few seasons. And I mean, it's just So. Yeah,
I was in on Thielen 2 years ago, but he exceeded my expectations last year.
Yeah.
He was. I wasn't as high on him last year, but him and Bryce Young have quite the connections because when Thielen's out there, he's contributing. So I don't know why we would write him off at this point either. All right, let's. So there you go. There's some thoughts on the rookies. We'll talk more about them, of course, and especially when training camps start, and we'll get the hype coming out. And you have to be careful too because the fantasy community gets excited about rookies. We love the new guy. It's just part of the deal. I remember when I was the new guy coming into high school, I had a moment. The ladies were excited. Here's the new guy. It faded fast. Reality set in.
The hype, you didn't live up to the hype.
It did not. No, I did not live up to the hype. It was a huge letdown. Sorry, ladies. It was a huge letdown. Now I'm happily married. So
right.
All right. So let's jump into the breakout topic. So each week here on the podcast, we will take a fantasy concept related to the Bible, related to life, and we'll start with a topic that is critical to our fantasy lives, but also more importantly, our walk of faith as we understand this concept of forgiveness. And when we'll start with the fantasy side of things, every season that we play fantasy football, players will let us down. Players will hurt our fantasy rosters. They will break our heart. They will underdeliver. They will not live up to expectations. They will cause heartache to our fantasy seasons. Players that we thought in the offseason, they're going to be awesome. I'm going to reach to grab them. This is my secret guy. I'm going to get at as a flyer at the last part of the draft. All of that happens, and then the season begins, and these players absolutely let us down. But here's what happens. A new season begins. Those players are still in the fantasy football mix. They are still players that will need to be drafted. And so we have a decision to make. Will we hold a grudge against that player that let us down last season, or maybe even 3 seasons ago, that we're still not over it? But there we are, sitting in the 3rd round, and we know that this is the top player available. And we'll have to make the decision. Will I forgive this guy, give him another chance, and draft him? Or will I be unwilling to forgive him, pass on drafting him, and he's on our do not draft list? Forget about it. I'm over it. I'm never adding him to my team again. I'm never drafting him. I'm never signing him. No way. Is that how we feel about certain players? And so let's hear some of our guys from last year. And some of you may even have listened to us last summer and go, I'm not forgiving Bryce for the player that he recommended last year. I was really high on a guy named Kamani Vidal all season long. Chargers running back. I thought he was awesome coming out of Troy. And Harbaugh never gave him a true chance. He had a moment. He had one big moment. I lost my voice because I was screaming so loud. But he let me down in a big way. And so I probably can't forgive him. You probably can't forgive me for recommending him to the level that I did last year. And I get it. I understand. But there are some other players that we do need to forgive. And so I will start with this. I was real in on Dalton Kincaid, tight end for the Bills. And he just never got the opportunity. The Bills just didn't leverage his skill set enough last year. But I'm going back to the well. I've got him in a keeper league. I'm keeping him. And I'm going to forgive Dalton Kincaid. I got to really forgive the Bills. I think it's more on the Bills side than Kincaid. But the talent's still there. We saw what he could do as a rookie. 2nd year, not so much. 3rd year, it's the year for Dalton Kincaid. Let's hang on. Forgiveness is available. So that's my guy. What about for you, Trip?
Should we start with one that I am going to forgive? I mean, for me, going into last season, there were 2 young-ish wide receivers that I was really excited about. They were Jalen Waddle and Chris Olave. I'm going to set Olave aside here. Concussion stuff was weird. Uncertainty around quarterback in New Orleans. But I think that I'm ready to forgive at least one more time Jalen Waddle. I think there are indicators in Miami that the offense is changing a little bit, that maybe Tyreek Hill is a little bit dissatisfied there. He's been causing some angst, I think, during the offseason. I still think that Waddle is a really, really talented player. I think for injury reasons, for just unusual ways that the season has played out for the Dolphins the last couple of years, the Tua injury, I'm willing to forgive him for some of the ups and downs that he's had the last couple of seasons, and I'm expecting big things from Jalen Waddle this season.
You can have him. He's on my do not draft list.
I'm forgiving Jalen Waddle.
No, thank you.
I think this is going to be a comeback season for him. Now, is he ever going to reach sort of the heights of hype that he had after that rookie season when he had so many receptions and looked like he was going to be like a wide receiver 1 for the foreseeable future? I'm not going there, okay? So I'm not saying that he's going to get back to those expectations. But as a guy that you can draft as like a wide receiver 3 right now, I think that I think is going to kind of break into the maybe mid wide receiver 2. I think I'm going to forgive Waddle.
Good luck with that.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm going to forgive him one more time.
I wish you the best.
I mean, the verse that's coming to mind for me is that Jesus, how many times should I forgive someone? 7 times? No, 70 times 7. And a lot of these guys, I'm like, I'm giving you one more chance. And Waddle is one of these guys that I'm giving one more chance. Another one that I want to hear your thoughts on is Trevor Lawrence. We got a couple of guys that are common on our list here that we came up with. Trevor Lawrence, are you forgiving him or not forgiving him?
Like I said, I'm still so confused with Jacksonville, and I don't have a real strong sense yet. Early July, I'm not there yet. I think he's got the weapons, with Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter. So he's been given every opportunity. This is absolutely his last chance.
Last chance, another guy.
Absolutely last chance. So hopefully he gets that. I'll probably end up with him because I usually wait for quarterbacks. So my crop of guys he's in that tier of guys. I would prefer, though, Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud, Dak Prescott. Jared Goff was awesome for me last year. So like in that tier, I still would lean toward those guys over Trevor Lawrence.
They're these guys.
But I'm willing to forgive Trevor.
I can forgive you, but can I draft you at where you're being drafted? Maybe those are two different things. So,
because things didn't work out coaching wise for him and Doug Peterson. That fit just wasn't there. One other guy that he didn't totally break my heart last year, but he's a little bit of a letdown because he did have some injuries, but it wasn't totally injury related, and that's more of who we're talking about. Injuries we'll talk about next week because those are bounce back candidates versus forgiving them. It's not always their fault they got injured. But Devontae Smith, he wasn't bad. I thought he was going to be more involved in the passing game for the Eagles, and they were Super Bowl champs. And so whatever they did, it worked. I was wrong. And so I thought that Philadelphia had too many weapons, that Saquon Barkley wasn't going to be as needed as he ended up being relied on. So the Eagles went heavy on the run game with Barkley. I thought the opposite. I thought Barkley was going to be a nice piece, but you still got A.J. Brown, you still got Devontae Smith, you got Dallas Goedert. They're going to be running, throwing, doing everything. And ultimately, they had a complete offense, and they won the Super Bowl. Fantasy-wise, though, Devontae Smith, I thought maybe would take a step forward, and he just never did. However, I will forgive him because I believe as Super Bowl champs, they could coast during the season.
Yeah.
But you know what? Devontae Smith is not the kind of guy that coasts.
Right.
He's the kind of guy that will show up week in, week out. Now, A.J. Brown is a little more volatile. So from a steady wide receiver, and now Smith is a little bit of a discount, I'm willing to forgive him because I love the way he plays football. I love his personality. He's solid. He is reliable. So it wasn't that he was bad last year. He just didn't do as much for my fantasy team as I would have liked.
I like that one. Yeah,
so
I think that's a great call. Yeah, I love that one. And I think he is discounted. I saw a trade in one of my dynasty leagues a few weeks ago where I was just like, oh, people are just kind of bored with him. He's just been reliable. He hasn't lived up to the highest expectations for him, but I like that one a lot. Here's a guy that I can't forgive. Are we allowed to do one? I know we're about to talk about forgiveness and the importance of forgiveness. I can't forgive Kyle Pitts anymore. I've been a huge Kyle Pitts stan. I've been a believer in him every year. And I do think there's a scenario where in the future, maybe he ends up on another team and gets to kind of hit reset on his career. But I just don't know what is going on with him in Atlanta. And it seems like he's had every opportunity to succeed. And now coming into the preseason, we're hearing these things about this foot injury that he has. I can't live through the Kyle Pitts experience any longer. He's good for one or two games every season where he catches a long touchdown and you're like, okay, maybe this is the beginning of the breakout, but it just doesn't seem like it's going to happen in Atlanta. Recognizing now that as soon as I've said that, he'll probably have his best season that he's ever had, but I can't forgive Kyle Pitts anymore.
Did I see this graphic correctly? I think I saw it on social media. So he's played 4 years, 1 touchdown, 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, or 4, 3, 2, 1.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Maybe it was that. Yeah. It was like 4. It was only, so the 4 is the max.
Yeah.
Was that last year that he had 4?
Yeah.
Or 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
I can remember at least 2 that he caught last year where I got excited.
Okay, so it was 4. Yeah. So it was 1, 2, 3, 4. So he's on pace for 5 this year.
This could be 5 this year. Maybe so. He's just, his rookie season was so good, and I still believe that he's talented. But when you're getting outpaced by Ray McLeod, I just don't know what to believe about him anymore. And I think he needs to get to a new team and a new contract to have a mental reset. Because I still think that he's a great athlete. I think he can be a good player, but I can't have him on my team anymore.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's good for you. I don't think maybe he's on one team ever for me. So, all right, and I'm in multiple leagues every year, so when I say that, that means it's minimal. So, all right, so as we talk about this, concept of forgiveness in fantasy football, ultimately, it doesn't really matter. We don't really. This isn't hopefully.
They don't care what we think about
personal hate, and these aren't real relationships. These are fantasy relationships, and so there's certain players you'll just never draft again. Part of the deal. But I think it's smart to forgive some of these players if for the right draft price. You get these guys and give them another shot. But when it comes to our own lives, I'm extremely passionate about this concept of forgiveness and the understanding that, okay, here's the deal. People hurt us. Relationships get fractured. People cause us pain. People cause us heartache. People do the wrong thing to us. There is no doubt about it. If we're living and breathing and we're dealing with people, people are hurting us. It just happens. And even in our day-to-day relationships, people will let us down. People that we love and care about will just, let us down in small ways, big ways. It's constant, right? We always have the choice. Are we going to forgive, or are we going to continue to hold the grudge, to become bitter, and to be unwilling to forgive? And as followers of Jesus, I don't think there's any arguing for unforgiveness. It is a total 100%. We are called to forgive. And the only way we can do that, one, is through the strength of Jesus giving us that the power to do so, to turn to him to help us forgive. But also it's the understanding of how he has forgiven us. And so when we have a deep understanding that we have hurt God, we let God down all the time, we have turned our back on him, we have caused, we've caused pain to other people and have given plenty of reasons that we should never be forgiven, right? Plenty of things, but we are forgiven. When we place our hope and faith in Jesus and the death and resurrection of Christ, forgiveness is available to us. And so because of that, we then forgive others. And so let's jump right into scripture. Let's see which one I want to start with. We'll go Colossians 3:12 through 13. So as God's own chosen people who are holy, set apart, sanctified for his purpose, this is the Amplified Translation, and well-beloved by God himself, put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, which has the power to endure whatever injustice or unpleasantness comes with good temper, bearing graciously with one another and willingly forgiving each other if one has a cause for complaint against another. Here it is. Just as the Lord has forgiven you, so should you forgive. That's it. That's my motivation. That's my understanding, that as the Lord has forgiven me, I should forgive. And so the countless things that I need forgiveness for, and Jesus has shown me his grace. He has forgiven me. He has given me salvation, eternal life, hope, and all the many blessings every day. If he's forgiven me, then I can forgive the people that have hurt me, let me down daily. My wife and our interactions. All right, I got to forgive her. Otherwise, if I'm carrying that weight and I'm carrying the grudge and I'm carrying the bitterness, it's destroying me. It destroys relationships with that person, but also it destroys other relationships. When we carry that unforgiveness with us, it ruins other relationships too. And so, anyway, I'm going long here, Trip. I want you to jump in on this. But I think this is a key thing, and it's hard. It's a process oftentimes. It doesn't necessarily happen instantly, but we've got to get to the point of understanding, all right, Jesus has forgiven me. My call is to forgive others. Jesus, help me do this, because I can't do it in my own strength.
Yeah. I mean, such an important topic, kind of in some ways, an evergreen topic.
Absolutely.
It's always going to be relevant in the lives of pretty much every follower of Jesus. I think that we sort of get lulled into, most of the time, when we apologize to other people and ask them to forgive us, it's usually for small things. I told you I was going to load the dishwasher, honey. I didn't do that. I said this word in haste to you, and I'm sorry that I did. And so we can forgive readily, but we don't necessarily feel the weight of forgiveness. That what it means to truly forgive someone is to take the harm that has been done or the cost that has been incurred into yourself, right? And with small things, I think we kind of do that in some ways dismissively and don't think about what we're actually doing. And then those big moments of forgiveness come along in our life, and we have to wrestle with, how do I forgive in this situation where I feel like real damage has been done, a real cost has been incurred? And so I guess one of the things I want to hear our listeners to hear is the time to think about forgiveness and sort of your personal theology of forgiveness is before those big forgiveness moments come, right? To pay attention. Jesus is talking about forgiveness all the time. He embedded it into the Lord's Prayer that he taught his disciples. Lord, forgive us our trespasses, forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us. And we just mentioned when Peter asked Jesus, and I love that Peter is in the Bible and that he's just a mess like me. And he asked Jesus, should I forgive my enemies 7 times? Jesus says, no, 7 times 70. It's a number of completion. It couldn't be bigger. And then he tells the parable of the unforgiving servant. And it's exactly what you just talked about, Bryce. It's where, as followers of Jesus, where our understanding of forgiveness has to begin is this king who forgives this servant of an enormous debt, 10,000 talents, an unpayable amount. And he says, I forgive you. And then the servant walks out of the throne room and finds another servant who owes him a few bucks and wrings his neck and says, when are you going to pay me back? And the king calls the servant back in and says, you don't understand what you have been forgiven. And so for me, one of the sort of spiritual point is, if you want to be in a place where you can forgive others, you have to meditate often, pray often about how much you have been forgiven by the Lord. He loves to show mercy. He delights to show mercy to sinners. He gives super abundant mercy for enormous debts of sin, and that's the place where our understanding of forgiveness has to start.
Amen. Absolutely. And understand is okay. It's no longer held against me. So if Jesus has forgiven me, and so all the sin in my life is no longer held against me. Now it's a bigger topic. Yes, there are consequences.
Right, there are worldly consequences, but
yes.
God doesn't count it against you any longer. Yeah.
I've been covered by the blood of Jesus because of what he did on the cross. And so understanding that, so if all my sin isn't held against me, then who am I to hold sin and hurt against someone who's hurt me? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Who am I to do that? And so to your point, it's about meditating on that truth and thinking about it. And even as I'm saying, it's like, all right, let me really process this and grasp the weight of this. But yeah, that is the truth of it. And the freedom that comes from living in and having a forgiving attitude. One, continuing to confess our sin to Jesus and saying, I know I'm forgiven, but I acknowledge I broke your heart. I acknowledge that I broke your commandment. I let you down. I let somebody else down. Having that ongoing is one thing, but then also the ongoing of, I'm not going to hold that against someone. I'm going to forgive them. I'm going to forgive them. I'm going to forgive them. And then when the big things happen, to your point, now that's who we are. We're forgiving people. If we're grace-filled people, then as hard as it becomes when it's something big, we're much more prepared to do that. And again, we rely on the Holy Spirit and the power of Christ to help us do that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, you hit the center of the bullseye when you said, look at the cross, right? Like how great was my sin? How significant was my debt? It was so significant that Jesus had to go to the cross to pay for it, right? He took the cost upon himself. The damage that I had done was inflicted on him. And so I see the severity of my sin at the cross, but how much does God love me? How much mercy does he extend to me? Look at the cross. He was willing to give his son. Jesus was willing to pour out his blood to forgive you. And the more that you set your eyes on Jesus on the cross, the more forgiveness as a way of life, I think, gets ingrained into your heart, and you become a conduit for God's mercy to other people. Now, I'll say, I think there are times in our life, and maybe if we live an especially blessed life, there is just a handful of times in your life where you feel like something so severe has been done to me that I don't think that I can forgive this. And it's important to say that you're allowed to say that too. I'm so thankful. I had lunch with a brother in Christ, faithful, older Christian in my life a few weeks ago, and he was telling me a story about a time when someone really hurt him, And he said, it was the first time in my life where I felt like I am incapable of forgiving.
Wow.
I can't forgive. Yeah. And here's the great thing. The Bible has a category for that. Christians all through scripture and down through history have talked about that as well. And you are allowed to come to Jesus and say, I don't think I can do it. And what's one of the practical pieces of advice that Jesus gives us? Well, in the Sermon on the Mount, he says, if you don't know what else to do, pray for those who persecute you. So if you feel like you can't look them in the eye and offer forgiveness, if you feel like that relationship can't be restored, start by praying about that, right? You're allowed to say to Jesus, I don't know if I can forgive this unless you, by the power of your Spirit, give me the supernatural ability to extend mercy here. I can't do it. That's a great place to be because now you're depending on Jesus to bring about that forgiveness in you. It's an act of his grace to you to use you to extend mercy to others. So I know that there are people who will listen to this who are saying, okay, but I can point to a handful of my times in my life where something so significant has happened that I don't know if I can forgive. And I just want to hear you say, you're allowed to say that out loud, and you're certainly allowed to say that to God. God, I think, loves to receive those prayers where we say, Lord, you told me to pray for those who have hurt me. This specific person has hurt me. I don't think I can forgive them. Can you help me forgive them? And I think, like you said, sometimes it doesn't happen overnight, but I think he loves to receive that prayer from us and to answer that prayer over time.
So good. And the word that I've been thinking a lot about is the word give up. There's a lot to unpack in that word, but in relation to this conversation, it would be easy for us to give up on the possibility of forgiving someone.
Yeah.
To your point, it's like, it's impossible. I give up. I can't forgive someone. But the other side of it is, I give up. I can't forgive someone, but I trust Jesus to help me through this. Yeah. Because if we just give up and say, I'm never forgiving that, and we put our feet in the ground and say, I'm not going to forgive him, and stomp our feet like my daughter was doing last night. I'm not going to do it. That's not the answer. That's not the heart posture. The heart posture is, I can't do it on my own, Lord. I need you. And so the other three words, we'll wrap it up. In order for us to go down this path of forgiveness, forgiving others, it requires humility. And humility starts when we have our eyes fixed on Jesus and understand the cross and view it through that lens and what he's done for us. It's humility. It's like, man, I'm an unworthy sinner who's been shown tremendous grace and forgiveness. Absolutely, I can show someone else forgiveness. And then also patience. The word patience is key in this because we've got to know it's a process. And then determination and saying, I'm not going to give up. Maybe I've taken a step toward forgiveness, but being determined to get to that point to where we truly can. I've gotten to the point of letting that go, and I'm not holding it against them anymore. And the relationship may never, be what it was, and a full reconciliation that always isn't promised. But the forgiveness element of that on our side of it, what we can, do with the Lord is possible. And so I encourage all of us to go down that path and experience forgiveness, because it's healing. There's freedom in it, and it allows us to move forward in a big way. So through the lens of fantasy, there's some guys we got to forgive. Let's go through that process. And part of that process is realizing, okay, they're in a new team. They have a new coach. They have a new quarterback. They're a little healthier this year. A number of things. You kind of go through that process. Similarly, we got to go through a process of forgiveness in our lives for the people that have caused us pain and hurt us. No doubt about it. So, any final thoughts?
I would just say, if somebody out there feels like I'm dealing with a big area of conflict where forgiveness feels impossible, there's a book called Forgive or Forgiveness by Timothy Keller.
Oh, cool.
A short list of like my all-time sort of pastor heroes, and I think it is sort of the preeminent book on forgiveness. It'll sort of wreck you and then rebuild you. And so if you feel like that's an issue in your life, next step would be to go check out that book.
Great recommendation. Awesome. Very cool. All right, so we're running long on time today, so we are going to push a couple of segments of content that we're going to give you today, but we'll do a little tease. So next week we'll dive deeper into this, but as a listener, I want you to think about this as well as you're doing your prep work. What teams will swing the fantasy season? The greatest range of outcomes. You know, we kind of know what the Eagles, the Chiefs, like some of these teams have been steady. Like maybe there's a little boost this year for the Chiefs. I think they're going to be a little better. Maybe the Eagles will maybe not burst out first 3 weeks, possibly. But then you've got teams like the Rams. Devontae Adams is there now. Is Kyron Williams still the guy? We've talked about the Steelers. They absolutely will sway things. The Broncos, like, is Cortland Sutton going to do it again? Is Bo Nix actually the real deal? Do we really believe that? The Chargers, they've got a wide range of outcomes there. Could they actually win that division? Is that possible? And then what are the fantasy ramifications for that? Of course, you got the Chargers and Broncos, and so there's a lot there. Or the Chiefs, I should say. Jaguars, we've talked about. And then the Bears, which we've talked a little bit about the Bears as well. If that hits and the Bears are a top team, that's huge for fantasy.
Watch out.
Or if Caleb Williams really just isn't the guy, that's got major ramifications to the fantasy season. So what teams are going to swing? And you can make the case probably for every team to a certain extent, but we'll look at a number of those teams next week. And then also, as you continue your draft prep, the offseason plan and some other things to be thinking about. What guys are in contract years? What guys just got paid and were just coming off of a contract year? They just had a big year. They just got paid. Is that going to continue, or are they going to kind of cool off a little bit because they did get paid? What guys are holding out? I don't like holdout guys. So get an idea of who might be holding out, who, the rumblings, get an understanding of that. And then, of course, injuries are always a part of the conversation. But do some research on who's coming back from injuries, who's getting healthy, that kind of thing. So that's what's coming up in the next couple of weeks. We'll have some fun with Would You Rather. We'll start looking at ADPs, our top guys that we want to take in the first round, breakouts, busts, steals, all that. We'll have fun. It's going to be a great season. We're excited to have you along for the ride here on the Fantasy Football Fellowship podcast. Trip, thanks for being with us.
Love it, brother.
Keep enjoying the summer, and we will talk to you soon next week, and looking forward to that. I'm Bryce. He's Trip. We're fantasy managers who follow Jesus. We believe in the good news that he died on the cross for our sin. He was resurrected, and through faith, we've been saved by his grace. I hope that is true for you as well, and I hope you'll join us as we live life as fantasy managers who follow Jesus together. Have a great rest of your day. Be sure to check out fantasyfootballfellowship.com. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Fantasy Football Fellowship Podcast.